Right. Amazing. Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Eva Earls, for joining us. And we're so happy to have you here for our Let's Cope with Holiday Stress webinar. And you know what? It's very fitting for this season, as we were talking earlier. So hope you all enjoy the webinar. And then at the end of the session, we'll send everybody a recording. We're also hoping that we can send this very valuable presentation to some of our families who are joining us in other programs as well. So yeah, over to
Great.
you.
Well, thank you, Vanchi, and thank you for the families that are coming today. And for those of you who are going to be on the recording, I'm going to share my screen with you. When I share my screen, I'm not going to be able to see questions. So if you have questions and you need to ask them, you can put them in the chat. Maybe Vanchi can read them out. Just because I'm trying a little bit at something new with my presentation. So I'm not going to be able to see some of that text. So I just wanted to let you know. I'm going to see if I can also share my face, but we're going to work with it. Okay.
Ooh.
So let's see how this one goes. Okay, there we go. Okay, everyone. So let me know when you can see this. Can you see my screen or just my face?
We can see both your face and the screen.
Perfect. That's what we want. Because sometimes it's nice to have like not a talking head.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for attending today. As Vanchi mentioned, I'm a practicing naturopathic doctor. But what's interesting about the way I practice is it's very mind-body, because before I became a naturopath, I did a degree in neuroscience, and mind-body is my jam. So when we're talking about coping with holiday stress, what I'm hoping that you take away from today's presentation is that I don't want you to kind of like grin and bear it through this holiday. I want you to actually think about this holiday with a little bit of honesty and clarity, and we're going to go through how we do that today. Because what I've noticed is a theme with a lot of the parents that I work with and families is that we're all kind of like holding our breath to get through intensive and stressful times. And then we're like, oh, we got through that. But life is not simple. And so even if we did get through like, Christmas Day, if you're celebrating Christmas, well, there's always stuff the next day, right? Somebody throws up on Boxing Day, then you've got to visit a friend and you don't really like visiting that friend. You have to drive 13 hours to go to this one thing. So life will continue to come at us. But it's an opportunity at a holiday time to actually have the thing that we want, which is connectivity and being with the people that we love and having some downtime. And if we start to think about it as we can actually influence the chaos, even if we can't control it, then we're going to have a much different experience of holiday. And we're going to have a more honest experience of holiday, right? If we think about Clark Griswold in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and he tries really hard to get his family the best Christmas ever, and it all goes to hell, right? His tree goes on fire, they kill the cat, he loses his job, he doesn't get the bonus, right? But at the end, they all come together. And it's a really good metaphor for how most holidays go for many people. And so we're going to think about how we can structure ours to give ourselves a little bit of personal grace. So the first thing that I want you to think about for your holiday is I want you to self in your mind's eye right now, ask yourself some truths. I want you to think about the things that you have to do this holiday season and ask yourself if you want to do what ones you actually want to do. And then I want you to think about the ones that you don't. And the reason it's important for us to notice those differences is that our pain points, our frustration, our anger, our sadness, our overwhelm are places that we can give ourselves breathing room and grace and space. But if we kind of just think about only the good stuff that we want to happen, and then there's all this other stuff that we don't want to happen, or we're trying to prevent that from happening, what will happen is that we won't actually get the good stuff either, because we're trying to control the stuff we hate versus accepting and going with it and giving us room to create the holiday that we want. Is everybody following that so far? Yeah. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable, right? Because, many families say, like, I don't like my mother-in-law, or like my sister drives me nuts, or I don't want to eat that thing. So we have to be aware we're already coming into a holiday with some of those pressures, right? But there's also things that we can create for ourselves. We're going to talk about how to do that today. So we are actually in this call today, we're going to create what we actually want in this holiday. And we're going to go through a little meditation in a minute. But before we do the meditation, I'm going to give you some things to think about. Because I feel that while we can't necessarily control all the craziness, we can certainly control how we feel and give ourselves moments of pause and give ourselves that connection that we want. And we can appreciate what we're trying to create for ourselves. So the first is that we have to come into what we want to create with knowing that there's going to be some things we have to expect, right? So many people are traveling, right? So they're going to be sleeping in different places, maybe not getting enough sleep because everybody's staying up late, talking to people. We could have a really big change in schedule, right? So I don't know about you, but I have a 7-year-old. When he goes off schedule and he goes offline, everything goes to hell because he's just very high energy. Also, when we have buckets of sugar in there with eggnog and cookies and all kinds of stuff, everybody's going to be a little bit more high vibrating. um, Sometimes we're not sleeping in our home, right? So it can be really tiring to not sleep in our home. And what does that look like? And then, of course, as parents and families, we've got this huge mental load, right? So if we're giving gifts to people, do we have the gifts? Where do we put them? How much do they cost? Or if there are people coming over, we have to clean the whole house. And we have to manage all the people's personalities in the house and maybe not have people sitting beside each other, right? And we're planning for if we're going to someone's house, what do we have to bring with us? So we already know coming into the season, there's tons, right? Physically and mentally, there's already a lot of pressure. Where we can actually give ourselves some open space is the stuff that we don't think about much is the emotional impact of all of that change, all of that unpredictability. So when we're feeling overwhelmed by all that change and we're feeling overwhelmed by our to-do list, it's actually our sign that we need to change it. So overwhelm is not a sign that we're doing it wrong. It's a sign that it needs to be done differently. We also have to be aware that there's going to be other feelings coming up around holidays, like grief. Like if we've experienced loss, we're not necessarily going to barrel through the holiday and go, who cares if I lost my mom? I'm not going to think about it. That's just not how we're wired. So we might want to give ourselves some grace and time to process the emotion that comes up, even if it's just acknowledging it to ourselves. So our emotion is actually going to be a place of wisdom for us to kind of put some realistic expectations around the physical things we have to do and the mental things we have to do, either by changing how we do them or taking them off our plate or delegating them to someone else. So we're going to hopefully go towards creating something that feels a little bit more loving and connected. So for you, and I put these into different categories because everyone's coming into a holiday with different needs and different expectations every year, right? Some holidays, it's about emotional well-being. We want to feel more peaceful. We want to feel connected, right? Some holidays, it's, I just am really pooped. I really want to be sure I get a bit more rest. I want to be sure I eat well and I don't eat a ton of sugar, or I'm going to go for a walk daily, or I'm going to try to take things off my mental load. So I'm going to write down a list of 5 things that I'm going to only choose to, and that's all I'm going to do. But I think it's important when we're coming into our holiday that we actually set our own expectations. This holiday, this is what I would like to see for myself. And nobody else has to know what your expectations are. You could have one thing, which is I want to do a puzzle over the 2 weeks. Wonderful. If that's your only thing, then you can create space to create it. And the reason why that's important is if we're going towards something that we love, even if everything goes to shit and you do some of that puzzle, you're going to be like, it was a great holiday because you fulfilled some of the criteria for your good holiday. Is everybody following me? So we actually can create that holiday for ourselves. Despite everything else, right? Because it's a lot. There's a lot of things to organize. So we're going to do a little activity together. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you're not on the call with me and you're doing this from home. I'm going to minimize our pictures so nobody sees each other with their eyes closed, because sometimes that can be a vulnerable thing. So I want you to put your feet on the ground and I want you to focus on your belly. So for some of you who are new to meditation or doing some mindful activities, you're going to put both hands on your abdomen and I want you to close your eyes and start to take some slow breaths into your abdomen. We want to feel our bellies expand. So, those of us that are holding our breath, trying to suck in our gut, we're going to allow our diaphragm to expand everything and drop into our pelvic floor. And then our exhale is just slowly bringing us back in. Now we're going to imagine you're in a safe space in your holiday. So that could be at home, in your living room or your kitchen. That could be outside if you have a pet, you're walking your dog. That could be in a celebration hall if you are in a church, synagogue, mosque. And I want you to imagine in that really safe and connected space, how does your body feel? What are the sounds that you hear around you? Whose voices are you hearing? What are you wearing that makes you feel calm and cozy and safe? In this future you, I want you to ask it a question. What is the one thing you need from this holiday to help it feel like a fulfilling time? Is it something physical from your body? Does your body need something from you this holiday? What mentally would you like to do or not do so it feels like you've had a restful time? Or emotionally, what kind of things do you need to help you feel grounded and loved? I want you to imagine those three things are going into a box in front of you. You're going to close the box, you're going to wrap it up, and then when we finish this meditation, you're going to bring it out with you. We're going to talk about how to implement those a little bit as well, too. Now I want you to thank this future self. And the future self is going to remind you, it may not look exactly like that, but we want to carry that feeling with us. How we felt in all of that place. We're going to take 2 more final breaths, and then when you're ready, we're going to come back together. So if you don't mind sharing in the chat, what are some of the things that your future self asked you that it wanted? So you can write them down in your phone, but I'd love if you could share one of them in the chat. Because when we share it with others, it becomes real. It becomes something that we can bring with us. And then Banshi, thank you for sharing, has mentioned that she would like to spend some time with her emotions, which is beautiful. What a beautiful thing to do. Time with self. So my future self showed me about myself being in community and that I was just feeling calm and centered in my body. So I could see a kitchen floor in front of me, but I don't exactly know whose kitchen floor it is yet. So we'll see what the holiday brings me, right? It wasn't mine. So sometimes that's nice too. It's like, what are the possibilities that my future self is suggesting? So some of the things that we can create can actually give us a lot of peace and calm depending on what they are. So If my goal is to be in community and to feel connected in that community, then maybe when I'm in community, it's going to be important for me to wear the right clothing so I don't get too hot, or to make sure I'm eating regularly and not just drinking buckets of wine, right? So there's lots of ways that I can create that connected community without getting out of center. So this is where we can start to ask ourselves some like practical, real life, down to earth things that we might actually need to create that self, right? So maybe if I got 2 hours sleep every day, then when I'm in community, I'm going to mostly be crying because I'm going to be tired, right? Or if I keep forgetting to eat because I'm doing too many things, then I'm not going to feel grounded or centered when I'm in community. So this is where I can ask myself, okay, what are some realistic things when I'm around a lot of people does my body need in order to create that self? Or do I need to have things off my mental plate so when I'm with people, I can be present? Right? So I don't have to think about how messed up my house is when I get home, or I don't have to think about the groceries I might need to do. Or maybe I need to wear a particular outfit in order for myself to feel safe and calm. So there's lots of ways to bring that down into reality. And most of us have some non-negotiables that we know if we don't do them, we get out of alignment. So is there anything that you know that you do regularly that if you don't do it, you're not your most centered self? Anybody have any ideas?
I think for me, I would say that um, it's something to do with routine, but that routine giving me some sanity. So it's more like what you said too, like, taking that time. It's because it's very easy to forget during holiday time because you're often thinking about everything else and everyone else around you to forget the routine for yourself. So for me, it's that maintaining that routine of sleep and making sure um, I'm doing the things that I would normally, but also if something doesn't get done, not being hard on myself. And
Lovely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, giving ourselves some grace that like it's helpful to stay within these parameters, but maybe I'm going to need a little bit more wiggle room for myself if I wasn't able to do that thing. Um, so that's a really important point. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes. So we want to really think about some of those like grounding priorities for ourselves, right? What are the things that we know for sure? If I get my, 7 hours sleep, or I sleep with this particular temperature in my bedroom, or I always make sure to have a shower so that I feel fresh, I feel like myself, or I get that quiet time for an hour when the kids are in bed. When I have those things, they help to ground me, right? So that we can be there for others. And often they are often physical. So our body goes in and out of fight or flight all day, and its job is to kind of bring us in and out of homeostasis, which is basically balance. So if we have those physical things that we know that we have in place, then often we can handle the chaos on top. So it's important for us to kind of get a sense of maybe one or two things that are definitely our non-negotiables that we kind of have to try to get anchored. And if we miss some of those, how can we catch up? So if we didn't get enough sleep because we had a sick child, is there any way we could have a sort of a half an hour lie down or just a quiet time the next day where somebody's watching a movie where we can get that recovery time? So when things are out of alignment, can we focus on that rest if that's something that we need to do? So having a sense of your like real physical priorities is really important because it'll keep grounding you down when everything else is going on around us. So the challenge we might have though is that often caregivers want to do everything for everybody else, right? So if I just make sure everybody else is happy, then it'll be fine. But we actually want to think about it in the opposite way. We have to be the anchor for ourselves. And then when we get what we need, we can be an anchor for others. So doing all of the things will not get us there. Doing the things that actually ground us and make us feel calm and centered will, because then we'll be able to drop the things that are not a priority, right? So ticking off 50 things on your to-do list on Christmas Eve is not going to make you feel grounded on Christmas Day. So we might want to sort of ask our body, okay, when do I need to stop so I can feel rested? Right? Do all of these things have to be done? Maybe not. And this is where our brain is going to fight us a little bit to get that grounding. It's like, but who is this person like that doesn't do all the things? So you're still a person too, right? So we have to create the anchor for ourselves and knowing that if we do too much, we're going to get out of our center. So I like to have people think about their well-being as a wheel. And these are obviously not equidistant, but these are basics that kind of help us to keep grounded, right? So sleep, we need to eat daily. We do need to move our body in some way, shape, or form. We actually need to play or rest, which can be at the same time. And most people do feel a sense of order and calm when their house is in order, but some of those things have to be done anyway. We have to do laundry, we have to clean, or it just gets revolting, right? So there's things that our priorities are kind of like our home, getting sleep in the home, getting some rest, getting some food, and connecting with others. Those are our real priorities. And then there's things that I put on the list that sometimes can be added to priorities because they're a well-being for family, like driving people around, having people go to certain clubs or activities, right? But we want to think about ourselves is that we kind of need to have some of these in flow in order for us to feel centered, okay? Now, when we get derailed, it's because one or more of those things has taken priority. And then we will start to see things like, I'm feeling really exhausted. I'm feeling my body is not recovering. I'm feeling really overwhelmed and scattered. I'm forgetting stuff. So I have a funny story about when I am mentally overwhelmed. I have a coffee carafe that is with my Cuisinart coffee maker. I have broken it 4 times this year. And every time I break it, I'm like, overdoing it again. So the first time I was like, I can't believe I smashed it. The second time was like, I did it again. The third time was like, doing too much. Okay, what goes off the plate? So scattered and overwhelmed. Rather than me saying, I need to do it better, all the stuff on my plate, I was like, no, 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 no. That's my sign that I've already gone past it, right? So when we are snarky and snappy and grumpy, those are our signs that we've already gone past and we haven't honored the balance in our well-being wheel. We've pushed it. We've pushed it too far. And this happens a lot on holidays, right? So you have all the other stuff you have to do. You have to get the kids up. You have to wash yourself. You have to go grocery shopping. You have to do a million things. And then you've got a dump of extra activity on top of that. So the wheel's going to look different over the holidays, but it does need to shift. So we can't do all of these things perfectly or we will burn out. Something will happen or we're going to get snarky and cranky and we're going to hate every single minute of it. Right? So things do have to shift. So we want to start to think about our well-being wheel as optional. So I invite you when you're finished this, I've got a PDF that you're going to take home with you where you think about your well-being and what your needs are over the holiday season. But I also want you to think about what your wheel is going to actually look like and what are the things that are the non-negotiables, right? So if for you sleep is non-negotiable, we know that regardless of whether your to-dos are finished, you have to get your butt to bed. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those sleepy, cranky, craft smashing people at the holiday because you're just not going to have the juice to do what you need, right? So I did one of these well-being wheels with someone in my practice recently, and they forgot to include eating in their everyday. And so they were like, oh, I'm not eating. I'm like, yeah. So it's not like it wasn't, they made it optional, but their body was like, actually, no, we can't do that. So they started getting forgetful and cranky and exhausted and they're in pain. They didn't know why. It's like, well, we keep forgetting to eat. That's not going to make us feel good. So it's not optional if it's required for our body to fuel, right? And some of these things we can drop. So at the holidays, you'll notice that this well-being wheel gets really big with crap, but it's not actually what we need, right? What happened to connection? What happened to rest? What happened, all of these things get shifted, but we get to actually think about what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to. Is everybody following me so far? And I invite you to think about all the things that you might be doing in one day and to do your own wheel. It's very eye-opening. Most people are spending far too much time on stuff that is not important and neglecting the stuff that is their grounding because they think once they get everything done, it's going to be all good. But that's not how it works. Our body will come to task and come and try to take back the energy we have given to all the other stuff we don't need to give. And so it will take us out if we don't listen. Or it'll make us really expensive if I bought 4 crafts this year. So we have to turn our yes into a no. There is a wonderful post by the holistic psychologist. She's on Instagram. She has 3 books if you want to read more about her. She talks a lot about that when we are chronically in the role of caregiving and we're doing a lot of people pleasing, then we need to give ourselves pause between saying yes. We need to wait because sometimes we will want to make other people happy, especially at the holidays. We're going to say, sure, sounds great, but we actually can't do it because we don't either have time or mental capacity, or we don't have the money, or we just need a break, right? So true connection and true joy comes from being our authentic selves, which also means we get rest and we get stuff for us too, right? So no is really important. Yes, it might be nice to see all of our friends, but in 4 days, maybe that's not realistic. Maybe the 3 weeks, of January that are kind of boring and everybody's locked in their house, maybe you could shift one of your social events to that time. And wouldn't that be lovely if you can't fit it all in? So we really have to think about what we're saying yes to. And a great way to figure out if it's a yes or a no. A yes will feel more excitement and peace or freedom or like relaxed. If you are not sure if it's a yes or a no, you'll get a weird kind of funny feeling in your body, like, ugh, like it's like it's this kind of tension point. It's not necessarily anxiety. And we know it's not going to ruin us if we say yes, but there's not an absolute yes. Right? So if we're not sure, maybe we'll feel like, I don't know. Sometimes that I don't know is great because that means it's actually a no, but we just don't have the words to say no yet. So waiting to answer to something. And then a full out no in our body will often feel like, ugh, heavy. If I have to do one more gift tonight, if I have to wrap one more thing, I'm just, ugh. Our body's bringing us down intentionally to get us to shut off. So I want you to think about what a yes, a maybe, or a no feels like in your body. And if you know those signs, does anybody know their signs of their maybes or their no's in their body?
I don't think I've really paid a lot of attention to it. However, I have to say, like, as you were explaining this, I think when I have my maybe moments, I do feel some sort of like a tightness in my chest, around my chest,
Yeah.
like a tingly thing.
Yes.
It's confusion. Like I want to say, and even when I tell myself, like, I'm going to come back to this answer instead of saying yes or no right away, there is that buggy feeling.
Right. Beautiful description. Like there's confusion, like that doesn't feel clear, right? Sometimes the lack of clarity is actually a sign that we need more information about something. And sometimes if we don't get that more information in time, it's a no, because it's not going to feel right to us. Right. So we can do this with silly things. If you're starting to practice, like what an embodied yes versus embodied maybe and no feel like you could be at somebody's house and you know those trays of food that everybody has on a table. And someone says to you, you really need to try my XYZ bar. And your body goes, and all you have to do is, I might do that later. You can just wait. Because maybe your body's noticing something that you haven't picked up on yet, or you've already had 10 bars. Do you really need another one? Right? So sometimes that not sure can actually become our no as long as we're giving ourselves permission and then not listening to that part of our brain that's like, I can't believe you're being like that. Right? So listening to what the difference is can really be very helpful actually in having us figure out what is better for us. So what can be really nice too is you're starting to practice working on what is helpful to you is looking at a self-care checklist. Now, some people like to write it down, or other people like to have maybe 2 or 3 things in the notes section of their phone. And we want to have your brain notice the times that you chose yourself. I did have that shower. I did take that 5 minutes to breathe for myself. I went outside and I took a breath instead of yelling at somebody, right? Whatever your anchor points are, we want you to reward yourself. You did a great job. It was really tough to do. You had a tough conversation and you did it anyway.
Mhm.
So some of those things will help us to recognize that we are doing really well, even in the face of lots of change, even in the face of lots of chaos. Not everyone's families feel safe, right? Some holiday situations are stressful. And so if you were able to do like 2 things that you wanted to do out of like 10 things over a week, that's amazing. And so we want to give ourselves acknowledgement. It's really important. So we don't necessarily have to give ourselves a treat every time, but I think it's really important to acknowledge the good that we're doing, especially if we're feeling overwhelmed. Our brain is really good at finding the negative, right? So it's really important to be like, yes, that was a tough conversation I had, or I didn't really want to say it like that, but I did really well at this part of the day. I did go to bed on time. That was really awesome. I hung up that phone call earlier than I was going to initially, or I ran outside with the dog and the kids, which was great. I took a break, right? So we want to acknowledge the things. And so whatever list that is for you, and you're going to do some of that in your PDF that you're going to go home with, you're going to figure out your own list. And I would advise you to just pick like 2 or 3 things to start. So it's not like this huge list of 10 things you have to do to keep yourself balanced over the holidays. Like that's just another stressor, right? We want these things to be like low hanging fruit, really easy. You can give yourself gold stars for, right? What's also equally important is things to not do. So as caregivers, I find that we have a tendency to fill our neutral time or time that we don't have to do something with more stuff to do. So lots of people are telling me they're doing laundry in the middle of their day when they're working from home, or cleaning up the kids' bedrooms, or like rushing around and getting more groceries. And it's not to say that those things don't have to be done, but we don't necessarily have to do them every single day, right? So our brain is really good at helping us to find tasks that could be sorted out. And some of that is because it's like, well, if I do more stuff, then the anxiety that I have in my body about all the stuff I have to do will calm down. But it's actually a myth. It never calms down. So what we actually have to do is challenge that so that we can drop one of the activities we would typically do instead of our self-support. So rather than cooking dinner one night when we're super exhausted, could we order during the holiday? Could we do our laundry only twice and close the laundry room door if we don't feel like looking at it, just so we can get that breather? Could we drop our phone, not be scrolling at night, and maybe listen to music or watch a movie? But I find that we have a tendency to overdo in the hopes that if we just get to the end of our list, it's all going to be fine. But it's not often true. And so inviting ourselves to notice the areas of our day that we could have a pause, that nothing's happening. It's like stop, drop, and roll. We're going to actually do nothing in that time, or do one of the restful things that we really wanted to do for ourselves. But it's equally important to notice the things we're doing well, but notice the things we don't need. I could do laundry right now, but I don't think I need to. I could just sit and read this book for 5 minutes. I could do this. I could just snuggle with my monkey. I could do this, but I'm just going to have some quiet time. And it doesn't have to be a long period of time. Like it could be 2, 3 minutes, but those minutes can be really valuable. It's just gives our nervous system a minute to go, oh, it's not all so busy, right? And you might even find a couple of days where you're able to do a lot more of this dropping. So some things that I want you to remind yourself of when you need a break, because I don't know about you, but we can do all of the right things and then eventually we will feel overwhelmed and we'll freak out because we're people. So I want to remind you that it's okay to be a person, right? So number one, it's okay to need space. If there's too much talking, there's too much noise, it's okay to take a minute. And number two, hiding in the bathroom or the closet saves lives. It really does. It really can help to give you a minute to take yourself back. You don't have to like everybody all the time, right? So we can love our friends and family. We don't have to always like them. If they say something that's frustrating, we don't have to be like, it's fine that they totally insulted me. We can be like, I don't really like them right now. Maybe not going to address it at this moment, but it's okay to be annoyed by that, right? We can take some deep breaths when someone triggers us and go, it's okay. I'm going to be fine. But if I'm really angry, I'm allowed to punch a pillow because pillows can be punched, not people, right? Because where I find as people, we have this expectation that we shouldn't be ruffled, right? Holidays are supposed to be about love, but they can also be about anger. We have real feelings. It's okay to allow them. And if we allow those feelings to ourselves and we give healthy outlets for them, then we're much less likely to have a freak out. Now, what I think is really important is that, sometimes our family itself can be a challenge, depending on the families we're from, but friends can be lovely too. So don't forget to seek out the community and love that you need. Even if this season you're spending a lot of time with your family and you don't get to see your friends that much, you can still reach out to those friends, right? Still keep your community with you, even if your community isn't the people you're hanging out with this holiday. So it's important to maintain that connection for yourself, even if it's just sending a note. Right? Because number 7, some people are never going to see and hear us. So we're not at every holiday supposed to make everybody better around us. Right. So a lot of times I hear in practice after holidays, like, I had that conversation with my parent for the XYZ. So I had this patient, conversation with them so many times and they don't want to change. Right. So we spend our whole holiday trying to convince people to be better or different. And sometimes that's a lot of energy and time. So we've got to recognize that not every event is about an opportunity to do that work. Sometimes we just need to stop, right? If we have kids, just reminding you that sometimes kids can act out at this time because of their lack of schedule, the sugar, the stimulation. They're good kids, right? But sometimes their behaviors aren't the best. It's okay not to like the behavior. It's okay to take a step away. And then number 9, sugar and caffeine and alcohol are not part of the food guide. So this is a major thing to keep in mind, that the more you eat of those foods, the worse you're going to feel by the end of that 2 weeks. And a cleanse, yes, it'll do it, but we could just do less, right? We could just do less of those food groups and add in real food, right? So don't underestimate having a real sandwich or a bowl of soup, a glass of water, right? Because holidays, we have a tendency to overindulge because, like, this is the 2 weeks we have to do it. But maybe we could just be a little bit more moderate about how we do that. And number 10, frustration is healthy and tells me when I need a break. So it's okay to feel like overwhelmed as well, too. I think it's really important to normalize our feelings, especially over the holiday season where it is a lot, right? It is a lot. We can be overwhelmed. It's okay to stop and be like, this is a lot. So we can't make everybody happy, right? So I think it's important to know that if you're going to have a good holiday because you went to bed earlier or you didn't do all the things and you started saying no, that people might be upset with you, and that is okay. Now, most people are adults and they can handle it. Now, some adults have tantrums too, but it doesn't mean that we have to change who we are or change what makes us grounded in order to make everybody else happy, right? Because not often are they. So it is important to remember that as you do good things for yourself, to ground yourself in self-care, to get to bed earlier, to make sure to eat, that there might be people who challenge you on that, right? So maybe this is the year that you're like, I actually want to drink less alcohol around my family. There's going to be somebody who's like, oh, I can't believe you're not doing that. So uncool, whatever, right? So it might hurt your feelings a little bit, but if your goal is to feel a bit more hydrated, then you're going to have to try to remember that not everyone's going to love your choice, but it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It just means that temporarily you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation. I hear this a lot in practice regarding food. I'm celiac, so I've been hearing that conversation since I was about 21. Oh, why can't you have that stuff? You can't just have a little bit. It's just a tiny bit. It's not a big deal. I'm like, well, it kind of is a big deal. I get symptoms for about 3 weeks, so no, thank you. Right? Every single year since I was about 21. So people aren't happy for that minute that I'm not eating their special thing. That's okay. More important to me that I feel well at the end of this, not that I ate that thing. So there's going to be choice points where you have to choose yourself. And so that does mean you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. So that's why it's really important that we ground into what are the really important things for us to stay like well and grounded over the holidays, so that when we're challenged, we can remember why we're doing it. So it's going to come up. So a nice way to do it is noticing the things that you did really well or that you appreciated over the day. So it's really nice at the end of the day to do like a top 3 things. So I do this sometimes with my son at the end of the day, especially if he's had a tough day at school. He's feeling grumpy. I'm like, what are 3 things that you like today? Did you like what you have for lunch? Did you like your shoes? Did you have fun at the playground? Right? So we can do that with ourselves as adults. Like, I really enjoyed that conversation. I really liked the eggnog I had. I really liked having 5 minutes to myself. We can just appreciate a couple of nice things. It doesn't mean we have to be like everything else that happened was fine, right? So if somebody says really something mean or cutting to us or disrespectful, we don't have to like that. We're just going to also focus on the things that we did like as a way to remember that there was good in the day if we are feeling overwhelmed. And a nighttime can be a nice reset of that if that is what we need. Or we can also do it so it's more how we managed our own regulation. So if we're really feeling like we are working on our calm and we were able to breathe and we were able to deflect a difficult conversation, there's lots of ways to do this that don't have to be about like body well-being. It can also be what we were able to achieve for ourselves, who we liked hanging out with. And doing this work, by the way, is something called glimmers. And so this is our nervous system seeking out joy and peace and calm. So the more that we practice like this went well and this went well and this went well, then every day our body will look and our mind will look for the things that are going well as well. So even if the kitchen is on fire, we can be like, wow, we put it out pretty fast. Not ideal that I need a new kitchen, but that wasn't as crazy as it could have been, right? So it's a way for us to accept the good and the not so good as like all kind of okay. And so we're kind of like making them into this beautiful melting pot. So sometimes doing a little self-care check-in at the beginning or end of every day. I really like to do this as I'm starting off a day to like see how tired or not tired I might be. I visualize it like this little container. Like I think about my bucket over the course of the day and I think about how much energy I have in my bucket. So for you, it might be water in your bucket, could be kinetic sand, it could be slime, whatever the heck you want to put in your bucket. And you want to be like, okay, I'm going to ask myself, how much energy do I think I have total in my bucket? So out of 100, do I have 10%? Do I have 20%? And the reason why it's important to know where we're starting is that if we're starting off a day with like lots of energy, we're feeling super happy, then we might have more to give. So we can spend time saying yes, and we can do more stuff. And that's great. But if we're feeling already a little depleted, this is where we might want to be like, well, this might be the time that I really delegate or I say no or I don't do something so I can conserve as much energy as I have, right? If we've been up all night with a throwing up child, we're probably going to have 10% of our energy that day, right? So we might want to think about activities that are calming and doing things less or saying no to stuff. And that's still a really successful day. Right. So we just want to be aware that it's okay to go with those ebbs and flows, especially at times of like a lot of activity. Sometimes you can track it over the course of a week or a month. And you can do it. And you get, of course, when you get the presentation, you can like download this and you can create your own list. And then what can be nice is if you're finding that you're noticing just looking at yourself over the holiday went well, you can carry it into the rest of the month into the new year too. So maybe your only goal over the Christmas holiday or the holiday in general was, I just want to feel a little calmer. And how did I do it? I was going to breathe every day. And then you just notice when I breathed during that month, did it make a difference? Yes or no? If that was my goal to try and help myself to be grounded. And maybe you noticed it helped only 20% and then you found something else was important, right? So there's lots of ways to think about how we can give ourselves that grounding over the holiday and make it extend into other parts of your life. So this could be a nice little experiment. Sorry, I put also that with food too, for those of you that want to download that. So lots of people are worried about food once they come out of the holiday. So let's do our exercise again so we can think about what we wanted in the holiday. So I'm going to have us do the same activity. We're going to close our eyes. I'm going to minimize us. Feet flat on the ground again. Hand on the belly. Taking some slow, deep breaths in and grounding ourselves. So this time we're going to go through our self-exploration, starting in a different place. So we're going to imagine ourselves at a time in our holiday where we might be feeling a bit stressed out. We're watching ourselves, and I want you to notice where you are. And I want you to notice what you are doing. Are you in the kitchen? Are you driving? Are you wrapping presents? Are you chatting with a challenging family or friend? And I want you to imagine in your minds that you're going to secretly give yourself a hug. Nobody can see you doing this to yourself. You're like a Christmas ghost, giving yourself that love from far away. I want you to notice how the image of you changes and then experience. I want you to tell that person, I see you. I'm here for you. What do you need? And you're going to listen for some answers in those moments of stress, what you need to help with grounding. Did you just need that hug and reassurance? Did you need to sit down? Did you need a glass of water? Did you need to remove yourself from some noise? Were you feeling too hot? A lot of times we can feel really warm in our body. I want you to imagine helping yourself get those things in that moment. Noticing how your body changes and yourself and your image of yourself in that time changes as you're doing that. Does your future self that's stressed out look happier or calmer? How has their body changed? How has the room changed around it? We're going to thank our future self for showing us moments of tension where we could use support and what we can do. And now we're going to imagine ourselves in a new scene, a scene where we're feeling really joyful and connected. We're going to imagine ourselves maybe in the same place or a new place. And what are we doing? What is the difference between stressed self and more engaged, connected, and grounded self? Has our activity changed? Are we doing something more restful and calming, or are we doing something playful? We want to ask that future self, what did you do to get here? Was there something that really helped you get to this place? Are there tasks that you took off your plate? Are there things that you didn't do so we could have more fun in that new spot? We're going to give that future self a hug. We're going to thank them for their wisdom. And then we're going to start to notice our own body in the here and now. We're going to take some deep breaths. We're going to stretch our arms and legs, do some little circles. And when you're ready, come back to us. And if you need to jot something down in your phone or on a piece of paper, some strategies from your two selves, the self that was coping with stress and giving that self some support and what it needed. And then the self that was in its most joyful, connected place. And what that self was recommending that you do in order to get closer to that joyful or connected place. And then we're going to talk about what we can do and what we've noticed about some of those things. So what did everyone notice about the stressed self, and what was our stressed self's triggers? What are the things that brought us out of alignment first? What are the things that made us feel overwhelmed or not ourselves?
I can start sharing if anybody else is gathering their thoughts and getting ready to type in a chat. I noticed that some of the things that got me stressed was um, my alignment that I go into a situation with. So, as you were saying initially, um, it's sometimes like my baseline needs unmet. So, I'm already feeling a little wobbly
Yes.
because I don't have enough. And then I'm going into a situation where I'm having to organize, but then I'm already depleted, or I'm not organized in my thoughts, or I don't have a clear head where everything is in its folders or in its place in my mental mind, in my mental picture, mind's picture. That's when I get anxious. Like I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And sometimes it's like also like I'm not feeling energized because I haven't had adequate food. I'm tired,
Right.
I'm hungry. And then on top of that, somebody's asking me something. So that's when it's slowly escalating. Or I need to take my walk so badly. I've just been sitting all day. I'm just not clear because I'm not I haven't had that body break. So
Yes.
I'm very lethargic because I haven't moved enough. And then you're asking me to um, problem solve something and I just don't have it. So that's when I'm stressed. Like I'm noticing that. Um, so yeah, that was my stressful
Beautiful.
self.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. Anyone else have anything that they noticed about their stressed self?
You can type in the chat as
Yeah, you
well.
can type it in the chat too. I noticed that my future self gets overwhelmed when she gets there's too much noise. So
Mhm,
too many things coming at me, too many questions, TV in the background. There's like
mhm,
too much input
mhm,
and I'm too hot.
mhm,
When like so something happens in my nervous system that I get hot and then
mhm,
there's too much sound and then I get
mhm,
overwhelmed. And
mhm,
so having that awareness that sound really
mhm.
needs to shift in those places for me is really important and that I might need to keep hydrated or have some cold water with me as well. And going into the next section, if nobody else wants to share, things that helped that self for me were giving her a hug to be like, it's okay to get overwhelmed, giving her a glass of water, and then getting her to sit down and take some breaths and to just calm her body. And then maybe to turn on different sounds. So listening to music that I like and kind of creating less sounds overall. Or maybe asking for some quiet time, right? So getting hydrated, some quiet time, or just a different sound that's not just ambient sound in the background. So that was really interesting to me. Um, okay, what about you, Vanchi?
You know what? I found very interestingly sometimes like my few like to cope, um, to kind of have a reset button. And a reset button for me looked like when I looked into it, it looked like having a little bit to nourish,
Hmm.
closing my eyes, even if it's like I was imagining myself actually in my office chair and like leaning back, closing my eyes, right? So just closing my eyes. It's not like not even a power nap, but just closing
Right.
my eyes for a little bit. And then actually writing it down, writing all that's like, kind of like coming in my head, like whatever is like,
Yes.
flooding in my head,
Getting it
just
out.
to just like write it down. And then when I'm writing it down, I find that it's now there. I can come to it later when I'm feeling better, one at a time.
Yes.
And if I don't
Yes.
get to it, that's okay.
Yeah. Vomit it out. Right.
Yeah,
You
that's what I told myself. Like that's what I could see when I was, um, you know, focusing on it.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And I love that so many of these strategies are so simple, right?
Mhm.
We don't have to go anywhere really. We don't have to do anything different. It's often about getting, our nervous system feeling more centered, our head clear, right? And we're just kind of like, okay, what's important, what's not important, right? Now, how different was that with the self that was having a great time and engaged and happy? How different did that self feel in that place? Was it the same place? Was it a different place?
Mine was a very different place. Mine was actually my living room, and I'm around my family, and we're all laughing, and it's actually enjoying a cup of coffee. Nothing like not a lot to eat or anything. I didn't see food in there, but sitting around in a comfy position and just like laughing out and connecting and talking and just finding out about each other's day.
Lovely. Yeah, that heart-centered connection.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, mine was outside. I was
mhm.
outside in the snow. I was
Yeah.
playing with a dog I don't have yet, maybe. And my son, and we were outside, and we were enjoying outside, and I love being in nature, so I was just being outside and
Mhm.
playing. So that was really fun. And then I asked my future self, how did I get there? And she said, don't cook,
Yeah. Well,
order
that
takeout.
explains your kitchen, the
Right?
kitchen you saw that was not yours, but somebody else's kitchen in the beginning, so
Right? She's like, don't cook. just makeup. I was like, cool. So
Right.
like, so it's like fun when you do those little activities with ourselves. It's like sometimes we have the answers within us, right?
Mhm,
The ways to
mhm.
keep it simple. Um, it's just giving ourselves the permission,
Right,
right?
right. Actually doing this, it's something else also came to my mind, which is that, um, I don't know if you've heard the term, Parkinson's law. When you have the time, some in your day, especially during like holiday times or you're planning and you're going about, and you find yourself having some time, right? And what do we do immediately during that time is not go into something that is rejuvenating for us or taking care of our needs, but fill it up with something else that you could do, like a to-do list for something else. Okay, let's like do go, the last minute errands for the stockings,
Yep.
or let's bake some extra batch of cookies, or like, oh, how about those thank you cards? But now you're filling that up that didn't really had to be done or that wasn't there, but you're just doing it because you have the time, you're filling it up and it's not your need, right? So
Yeah.
what what we've done so far, what you've walked us through quickly reminded me of that. I was like, oh yeah. And so like easy to forget and get into that mode. But yeah, you just
Yes. Yeah. Like the brain, I think, can be a wonderful place,
Mhm,
but I think we have to keep it in check and remember that we are not, in fact, that to-do list or all of the things that are required of us, especially at a time where it's busy, right?
mhm,
And coming back to those like heart-centered times and the times that we actually, what our actual needs are compared to all the other things that we have to do, it's it's important and it's simple, but it reminds us what is actually important. And we can drop that to-do list, right? Like sometimes we don't have to do the thing. There's lots of things we don't have to engage in, and that can actually be really grounding when we don't. And when we spend more time filling our cup up with the stuff that we do, it will get sorted out in many ways. And we just have to kind of keep that brain in check. But just knowing what our values are coming into that holiday, and each holiday is different, will help us to stay grounded, right? Even if it isn't exactly how we thought. So thanks for doing that activity with me, everybody, because I know it's a little different. It's probably not what you thought about doing for holiday stress. Because a lot of times people are talking about how to make their to-do lists better. But that is in practice over the last 15 years, I've realized a recipe for crazy making. So the way we get to what we really need is through asking ourselves what we really want in the real sense. So what I did prepare for you is a handout to take with you that kind of summarizes what we talked about today and what's really important. So on the first page of the PDF, you'll see the list of the things that we maybe want to consider and the things that are draining to us. And then we're going to have you kind of create your own list of things that went well, things that pulled you out of that center, and how you were able to give yourself love and grace based on now your knowledge of that future self, and what they can suggest to you in overwhelm, and what can they can suggest to you as heart-centered as well. So I just wanted to finish with that. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for attending today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eva. I was just wondering if you don't mind sharing the PDF with myself or someone as in our team, and then we'll make sure that our families who attended and the families who we are going to send this recording to will also receive it because our plan is this is such a valuable webinar. I'm so glad I was part of it, and I can see this being timeless because I often also see this being applied into other times of the year, like whether
Yes.
it's like before a vacation, very often you're like going on a vacation, but you're preparing so much and you're just even losing sight of like why we're going on a vacation is to like rejuvenate or like time off.
Yes.
So I think it's important for us to spread this with our other families too. And when they're doing it, I think it'll be so handy for them to have the PDF. So we'll be happy to share that.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, if anybody have any questions for Dr. Eva, you can type it in the chat or turn your microphone on.
Anybody have any questions they wanted to ask? I know there's not a huge amount of people attending today, but that's okay. There'll be lots of people on the recorded.
Yeah.
So if there are questions in the recording, they're welcome to reach out.
On that note, I want to thank Dr. Eva for your time on behalf of OPCC. This was honestly a very well needed and timely webinar that we got to listen. And as you were saying, yes, maybe people were thinking that we're going to tackle less. That's what this workshop is going to be. But no, this is much more important. It's like taking care of ourselves and like that self-love and that importance about feeling grounded. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insight, and most importantly, your time. And thank you everybody for signing up for this webinar. You will be sent a recording shortly. I'm going to stop the recording here, but if you still have questions, feel free to ask.